everybody, welcome back. I'm DM Dunn, and this is going to be Beginning Crafters Terrain Part 2 Painting. So if you watched my other video, you learned how to build some starter terrain. Now your terrain does not have to be this big, and I would probably encourage you to make it smaller. One example would be just these two pieces that were on the top right here. But you can make them these big as well. So last time we made this, and then there was just one thing that I did that you guys didn't see me do, is I added a couple of extra of these, as you look like black rocks, or look like, probably like chocolate chips right now. But the sand was on there, but it was just kind of loosely on there. I did it when the drywall compound was wet. However, I did take some diluted, like regular glue all, like that white glue or the school glue, diluted by 50% with water. So if you have a bottle of glue, if it's half empty, then you just fill it back to the top with water, shake it up really, really good. And I literally just squirted that very, very wet solution on here. And then I just had a cheap cutting mat that I got from, again, like the Dollar Tree. I don't know, I think like 5 or 6 of them came for $1. And I just set it on here to dry. You can probably see some of the glue spots that it dried. And then just peeled it right off. And what that does, that sets the sand on there more firmly so that when we do the painting today, it's less likely to come off. So what we're going to do today is moving forward with getting this thing painted. And one thing that I learned from Black Magic Craft is to try to give it a nice good coating first. A, for protection, B, so you're less likely to melt your foam, and C, so for color wise you have a base to start with and then you can add your colors on top. So a good way to do it is to use Mod Podge. I like to use the matte so it's not trying to be shiny or anything. And then you want to mix it up with some just like black paint. Find a jar, container, something that you're going to use, and just mix it up until, and there's not an exact formula with like what percentages, just until it looks like a dark gray. You don't want to go like super black, because if you have too much of the paint, then the Mod Podge will start to lose its effect. So maybe like a dark gray would be a good way to rule of thumb to judge it by. And so I have some here in a glass jar that I use. And then I've been sitting here for a while, so since I've used it last. So I just grabbed one of my crafting sticks that I had available. These are just like little dowel rods, and I got a bunch of these, and I used it to stir it up so it was nice and stirred up. And what I'm going to use for this is I like to use these sponge brushes because, one, they're super cheap, and I like to be able to dab it on to the terrain better versus just trying to brush it this initial coat, and you're less likely to brush more of your sand, which is going to look like texture. You're less likely to brush it all off if you're trying to do a lot more of the dabbing. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And I'm just going to go ahead and just pop on one of my gloves here. And you don't have to be I don't know, fancy with it. You can just glop it on, and the object here is to get rid of anything that looks white so that you've got this nice dark coating on here. The good thing about the dark coating too is that when you're painting, this will be in the deep crevices, so that whenever people or yourself are looking at it on your terrain table, and you have some parts that maybe your brown or your grays, depending on the colors you want to go with, aren't on, then it'll be dark inside of there like deep shadows, which is exactly what you're looking for. So this is also going to help you get those deep shadows. There's another way that you can try to get those too, and that's another painting technique that is also used on painting your miniatures. And that's using what are called washes, which are basically like runny paint, like really watered down, well, I won't say watered down, but diluted paint that will go into like the crooks and crannies and the nooks and crevices. Because if you buy like those detailed miniatures that have all the little details, then it looks really, really neat when you get those dark shadows inside of there. So I'm going to paint the rest of this without talking, so we can probably fast forward through this. All right, so now we've got this a bad boy all dried up nice and ready to roll. So it looks pretty cool because instead of all white, now it's all black. So we've got it all protected. Now if you want to, you can also go ahead and Mod Podge the bottom of this well. And then you have that surface to kind of sit on your game board. But for today, I'm just going to go ahead and just leave it raw. And it's not going to hurt anything because it's still nice and soft and smooth. So it won't scratch up my game mats or anything. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put some colors on here. Now you have a couple of choices. If you want this to be more of like a rocky outcrop with like stones and rocks and not really much, or if not any vegetation, then you're going to want to go with some different colors of gray. So you want to start with your darker gray and then maybe another 2 or 3 versions of lighter grays and work your way up to the highlights. So you can do that. You can also do browns. For example, if you wanted to just make it look like dirt, you start with darker browns, work your ways up. I like to do something it's called like a burnt sienna. It's a little bit kind of like a reddish brown, and it brings a little bit of pop to it. And then you can go into some like light beiges and tans for your highlights, and do that version as well. What I'm going to try to do, and I haven't done this before, so we're going to see if it works, and we're going to find out together. And that's one thing I want you to know about crafting and making things is sometimes you're going to try stuff and it won't work out, and that's okay. You can either toss it, or you can try to fix it, or you can just use it as it is. So don't worry about everything always having to be perfect. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make this more like grassy and like hills, grassy hills. And since we've got the bumps from the sand and these little rocks, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to do a dark green first to make it look like it's like the grass. And then I'm going to work my way up with some other lighter color green highlights. And then from there, I'm going to try to use some of the browns to kind of lightly go over the sand. Make it look like it's like dirt, kind of like on top of it, like little dirt clods. And then these bigger stones that we placed on individually, that's where I'm going to go in with the grays and actually make those look like individual rocks that are on top of there. So that's the plan, and we're going to see how it turns out. So you can go to like a Walmart or someplace and get like a set. I think I'm missing one of these. I think there was like 4 of these for just a couple of dollars, like $2 or $3. And this is a good size because if you're using bigger terrain, that's going to be a lot easier to do with something like this than a tiny little paintbrush like that because you'll be there all day. So when you're doing your terrain painting, so bigger brushes are probably going to be a pretty good idea. So this looks like it's going to be a pretty good size for me. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. And I'm going to start with a dark green. And again, you don't have to get fancy, expensive paints. This bottle right here is 50 cents at Walmart, and it's called Apple Barrel. So you can get a pretty good collection of paints for just a couple of dollars, and it not being a really big upfront cost for you. And I like to have a brush that I can kind of dry off with as well. And again, just like with the Mod Podge, we don't have to worry about being light with this or doing like a fantastic job. We can go pretty heavy and almost 100% coverage on this. And if you do have a little bit of like the black still showing, then that's okay too, because that will just be a dark part of our area here of what we're working on. So don't be afraid of messing up. Like I said, when you're crafting, you're creating, and this is an original, and this is a one-of-a-kind, and nobody else has ever done it. You might be trying to do a version of what like mine that you see here, but yours is different and it's unique and it's yours and yours alone. And so there is no right, there is no wrong. If you think it looks good and it's going to work on your game table, then by all means, go for it. Now, I told you the big rocks, these ones right here that we added, I'm going to paint those individually, but you don't have to worry about trying to avoid it because we're going to paint over it later. So don't have to worry about being all crazy detailed, about trying to be all slow and try to paint around it. Nah, just throw it on here. Kind of like I've said, Mother Nature, you know, she doesn't have like a straight edge, so she doesn't make straight lines, so nice and wavy is kind of cool, but she also just kind of like throws color kind of haphazardly, and she does some really beautiful things, but it's just a bunch of colors that are mixed together. She's not like trying to make it all perfect and uniform, but it all seems to work out, and your stuff will too. So maybe we can fast forward the rest of this. Okay, so it looks like we've got our base coat on, and once you're happy with it, you can see it's still kind of dark in some areas, and I'm totally fine with that. But if you're not, then you can just get a little bit more paint on it and maybe do another coat and make it more of a green, as a deeper green as you want. So now that I've done the dark green, I like to kind of move it off the side so I don't repeat myself. Kind of what I've done, and I'm probably not going to use all of these, but what I did is I set them up, the colors that I have from darkest and then on their way to the lighter ones, so that I can kind of make progressions. And maybe I don't go the very next one, but maybe I skip it, and then, you know, but I have them all available, but doesn't mean I'm going to use them all. But those are the ones I've collected, and I have them in line so that I can kind of just look and just kind of say, yeah, maybe I do want to go ahead and get a little bit of that. So I'll give it a quick shake. And it is recommended that you actually shake your paints really well. I usually, especially when I'm just doing crafting, I don't shake it as well as maybe I should. But when I'm doing my miniatures, then absolutely it becomes a little bit more important to shake those bad boys up pretty good. But with terrain, you can't really mess it up. So you don't have to worry as bad. And so I'm going to put a little bit less on the brush this time, and I'm going to use the edge of that little lip to kind of brush some of it off. And I'm just going to, instead of trying to do full coverage, I'm just going to kind of hit it here and there. That's looking pretty good. What do you guys think? Looking pretty good? Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do another green. I want to do like a highlighter green, something a little bit more bright. So I think maybe I will go with something like this. But this one I'm going to do a lot less. So I'm going to use the smaller of those three brushes now. And I'm just getting it wet just to kind of loosen it up and get it kind of ready. And a little shaking on that. And then we'll see if we can get some a little bit of highlights. So you don't need, I'm not going to need as much on that one. And what I'm going to do too is I'm going to use the paper towel to kind of take a little bit of that off. Let's see. So now I got the base green, I got one layer of highlighter green and then a second layer of highlighter green on there as well. So now what I want to do is I want to see if I can try to pull out some of the sand as dirt. And so I'm going to try to brush a lot more lightly and do kind of what's called a dry brush technique. And we're going to see how it works. So I'm going to use one of my browns, not my darkest brown, but the next one there. And then we're going to see how this goes. That. Okay, so that was what, 1, 2, 3 greens and then 1 brown so far. And then maybe now we want to try to get a little bit more detailed on those specific rocks that we glued on, those bigger versions. And then that could actually be it, and you could be done with it. There are more things that we could do, but I want it to be realistic and easy for you. Maybe I'll do another video trying to add some extra stuff, but I can promise you this, or anything similar to this, or your version of this, is going to look really, really good. To start with. And then oh, look, I just made my rocks bigger. That's how you make your rocks bigger. Put on your little cheater glasses. And I say, smoke where you got them. Use them if you need them. So, in here. So you can just start off with just a nice little layer on there. So I'm going to do these, and then we can probably fast forward through this. And so now you should have something like this. So got a beautiful little mound, got some little decorative stones. So you put this on any of your tables and any of your battle mats, and this is going to look awesome. And your all your players are going to be oohing and awing, and you're going to be getting all of the praise. So great job, everybody. If you liked, take some photos of what you do, post them in the comments. We'd love to kind of see what you're doing. If you have questions along the way, just ask us as well. And if you can do us a great big favor, hit the thumbs up, the like, go ahead and subscribe as well. And if you really want to help us out, if you're going to buy anything from Amazon, just click our link below, our affiliate link, and then it'll get you to Amazon. Then when you're ready to check out, it'll ask you for your normal login, and that way we get credit for sending you to Amazon. That really helps out. So if you could do that, we'd much appreciate that. You can also check out our website if you want to get any of our crafts, like the dice jars and things like that, dmdone.com. So until next time, have more D&D fun with DM Done.